G'day fans, and we're back once again talking about the Book of Boba Fett, the old chapter 6 actually, which aired like days ago now, but we're here to sort of give it the once over and to see what we thought of it. Oh my god, there was so much stuff going on in that episode. My brain was literally exploding. Well, actually it wasn't, but it was literally exploding. I had things leaking out my ears. Mr. Aaron, how you going, old son?
Good. I gave it the once over and the twice over and the 3 times over. There's lots to take in this episode, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly right. So we've got a few people joining us. All right. Mr. Gavin is at the top of the food chain. He said hello to me, didn't say hello to you. That's obviously a sign of things to come. Good old Christy's with us, and of course Ange, Mr. Greg, and all the rest. And then Dr. Aaron. Oh, okay. That just sounds
he called me doctor. He respects me more.
Yeah, exactly right. So especially when he's got the rubber glove on, and because Mr. Daniel has joined us as well. There's a lot to discuss in this particular show. So the key thing is it's the second last episode of the Book of Boba Fett for this series. Which means next Monday is our last episode where we cover off in great detail what the last episode was all about. And of course, one of the things is there was a few things that we sort of predicted from the last episode that were going to occur here. And in some cases, we got it all right. But one of the things that we said as an ultimate gag is that, hopefully the last 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, it'll all be Boba Fett centric. And of course, that kind of just wasn't the case at all. So it really was a case of, as I said in the gags, have you seen him? Please return him to the show.
I think we said, will we see the Mandalorian go to Grogu? And no, that'll happen in the Mandalorian series. But no.
Absolute funny stuff. So we're going to go through it in detail as per the usual, and there's a lot to cover off in this particular thing. So as always, we go through the drill. Yeah, it's all spoilers. You already know all that. Yep. And the episode, for those who didn't pick up on it, From the Desert Comes a Stranger. And of course, as it turned out, the stranger was actually a bit of a hit. So, we did say 2 weeks ago that it was important that poor Mr. Boba Fett get his place back within the show and to stamp his authority as the main character. And kind of once again, he got jibbed big time. So, I mean, even though we're joking about the fact, hey, have you seen Boba Fett put him back in his own show? But, to be fair, there's actually quite a serious side of it. So, what do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I think Grant's comment really says it all. It's back to the Boba Fett of the first 3 movies where he's only in it for under a minute or 2 and hardly says anything. That's what we've got the last couple of weeks. I don't think anyone who is a Star Wars fan and follows any Star Wars pages can have failed to see all of the memes and discussions about the lack of Boba Fett in this episode. I mean, 1 episode you might give it a pass, but 2 in a row is a bit disrespectful. How did you feel about it, Dag?
I'll talk about my thoughts and views about it as we get further along. And you are right, from 2 weeks ago, where everybody said it was like the greatest Mandalorian episode ever. Even we brought up the fact that it was a bit of a concern that Fett was getting sideshowed. And then last week's episode, people are now thinking like we were thinking all along, thinking, oh, hang on, there's something a bit dodgy going on here. I remember we said about the conspiracy theory that Fett was deliberately being ousted from his own show. Kind of put a bit of weight to our theory, didn't it, from last episode? So anyway, let's not stress over it. We'll go through the episode as per the usual anyway. Now, like in the previous episodes of the series where it was like flashback and the present and the flashback, we're going to do this in order this time because we appear on with the good old Fluky Luke and with Grogu. Then we go to Tatooine and we go back to Fluky Luke and whatever. So we do it in the actual order it appears in the series. So Christy said, look at your shirt. It's still leaking. I don't know. I assume that's your shirt, dude, because I'm not leaking. So, yeah, indeed. What do you reckon?
Could be. It's got a wave on it.
Indeed, exactly. It's like having a love boat without the boat. Yeah, exactly right. There's a lot of love in this show, that's for sure. All right, but there's some love for certain things than others. I just wanted to chuck in something. This is completely left field, just to cover off something we discussed. Might have been a week or 2 ago. It was from the episode where Din gets in his ship, his N1 starfighter, and flies off around the Boonta Eve track. And we said, well, where's the distance between Mos Eisley and Mos Espa? And I mentioned that in this map here, that Mos Espa was way up there and Mos Eisley was way down here. But, of course, I didn't know if this map was canon. As it turned out, it's not, because, as you pointed out to me in the first episode of The Mandalorian Season 2, The Marshal, Pelimoto says, well, Mos Espa's there and Mos Eisley's there. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that throws that map completely out the window, which means Din could have just got in his ship here and just sailed around the Boonta Eve track and sailed back again. The only downside, of course, is that in Attack of the Clones, Watto said that, Mos Eisley, it's a long ways from here. So,
yeah, but he's got little legs.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. Maybe it's a long way for him to fly. So, yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
So, but that sort of cleared that up. So Mos Espa and Mos Eisley are relatively close together. So, good stuff. Now, we're going to kick this off. Now, typically, it's the banter in the room, and usually it's something negative, something that we're going, oh, this is just like not passing the pub test or the Sanctuary Cantina test. But this one is just a discussion point. It's nothing negative. And of course, it was I guess, the big thing of the show was the appearance of good old Fluky Skywalker, Mr. Luke himself. And first off, what were your thoughts? Not what the story was, just of how he looked and sounded.
I thought he looked much better than the last season he was in. They've gone full on in full sunlight, walking around, interacting with his environment a lot better. The deeper thought I had was, okay, this isn't a one-off thing at the end of The Mandalorian to make everyone go, oh my gosh, it's Luke, we had the cameo. This is going to be a regular thing we're going to see in this, with old characters coming back, having major roles, digitally recreated or de-aged. So I like that. I like they're bringing the old characters back. Luke is obviously going to probably be the first of many, I would say.
Yeah, I got to give him a lot of cred points. The character did look outstanding. Now, some people have been a bit critical, saying, I still looked a bit digital, this, that. It's like, oh, man, cut the guys a bit of slack. I mean, you are right. Compared to the last episode of The Mandalorian, Luke Skywalker in this looked spectacular. It looked really, really good. They're really getting to the point of just getting that whole CGI thing down pat. And he was all throughout the entire episode, not just one or two shots. And I heard a story, now I don't know if this is true, but you listen to his voice, and his voice was very young Mark Hamill. And I heard a story that somebody had got a computer program that analyzed all of his audio from the original trilogy, probably A New Hope, and they were able to manufacture words from that. And that's the reason why he sounded like he did. So it's not like Mark Hamill today went in and re-recorded his voice. They actually made a point of going back in, because he sounded too young. He sounded exactly as he did in A New Hope. And I thought, if that's true, that's actually very, very impressive. So, yeah, I've got to give him a lot of cred points to that. Oh, it is very well done.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because when I was listening to it, I thought, gee, he's a good voice actor if he can capture himself that well as a younger age. And then when you look at the credits, he is credited as being Luke Skywalker. So I did think it was him. But if they have actually taken his own voice from the past and recreated sentences and acting from it, I guess it is him.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, two things I wanted to bring up. So good old Spankins joined us, and he said that, hey, guys, he sounded great, and he did. That was, he looked good, and he sounded good, right? So anybody who's nitpicking is just literally nitpicking. I've got to say, hey, welcome to good old Dale. Good old Dale's joined us. Fingers crossed we get more cameos from all wonderful and varied characters in a galaxy far, far away. Absolutely agree with you. Good to see Dale joining us. I highly respect and like Dale's opinions, which is particularly groovy. One thing I wanted to point out just regarding the whole Luke Skywalker thing, funnily enough, a few weeks ago, in the previous one of my series, Sci-Fi Zone, we actually had a discussion, a video, discussing about whether digital actors were the future of films. And as it turned out, now we're more correct than ever in that discussion. So if anybody's interested in watching that, I mean, you've got to get into about 18 minutes before the actual discussion starts. You can just go to YouTube, and as it says there, just search Sci-Fi Zone digital actors, and the episode will pop up. And it was our discussion, this is before this episode, obviously, about the future of digital actors. And this episode proved more than anything else that you can have them in the show, and they're unbelievably realistic. So all power to them.
It's interesting, because the first time I ever thought about or heard about digital actors actually was in Star Wars Insider, which is the fan club magazine. And this is going back probably before episode 1 came out, where estates of deceased actors were a bit wary, because Lucasfilm were buying up the likeness rights to people like Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe. And that was the first I thought, maybe you'll see some of these actors come back. And now it looks like they've really captured it and able to do it.
Yeah, indeed. So that's obviously, if you want to watch that episode, we go through that in great detail. It's just ironic that we covered it off a few weeks ago, and here it is for real. So Christy said the biggest problem with Luke was that the wave only had a major expression, seemed odd without the micro expressions. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's not clearly not perfect, but it was a damn side improved over what we saw recently. So, but I thought, excellent. You want to bring Luke back the way he looked straight after Return of the Jedi. It was winner, chicken dinner right across the board. So well done for that. All right, so we're going to play through the episode as per the norm. And of course, we got to see the return of good old Marshal Cobb Vanth. Walking in, it's like straight out of the Wild West. He just needed the hat. He's got the scarf. He's got the gunslinging thing going on. It was good to see him return, and it's like got his bit of an attitude thing happening. So how did you find all that?
I found this good. This is kind of the series I thought we were going to get in either The Mandalorian or this, where it was going to be the outposts in the Old West with gunslingers and things like that. So this is kind of what I was looking for from these series anyway. So it fit right into sort of the I guess the genre of space sci-fi western that I kind of thought would work for Boba Fett.
Yeah, no, exactly right. So he turns up and he's looking at some pike dudes, right? And of course, the old Camtonos, they've got 1,001 uses. So, I mean, I'll put the gag in there for those who didn't get it. They first originally appeared in The Empire Strikes Back, carried by an extra who didn't get a name until decades later. Good old Wilrow Hood, as you can see at the top up here. And it is, believe it or not, an ice cream making machine from the 1980s or the late 70s. And of course, it's ended up in The Mandalorian as a device that you can carry things around in and all the rest of it. So the Pikes turned up carrying their money, and Cobb Vanth decided to come along and just give him a bit of a wherefore-all. How'd you find all this?
Well, this was good. Again, the Pikes are sort of the things that the new, I guess, the new race in the series. They've been in the background in other things. I still would have liked a more recognizable race as the big bad guys. I think I did point out to you, and I think I was right. He takes out 3 of them with 2 shots.
Mate, that's Cobb Vanth for you, mate. He's the slickest cat in town. What can I say?
I did think there was going to be something where the third one got up and had dobbed them in or something, but no, they were all dead, and he leaves them there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's exactly right. And I've said that too. So the dude gets in his car and buggers off, and it's like, mate, what about picking up your buddies? He's like, so is Cobb Vanth going to send him a bill, an invoice for cleaning up the corpses and saying, well, you just left your trash behind? It's like, what's the deal with that? So unbelievable, but it all looked very, very groovy. So anyway, and the thing I found funny, right, is we're dealing with spice. So who gives a shit about spice in the Star Wars universe? But apparently the spice must flow. So he kicks over the container, it's all flowing out. It really has all these Dune implications about it, and they got a really sort of an interesting sort of connection to that film. So, or that series. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I've said all along, it really reminds me of Dune. When Star Wars came out, there were, of course, a lot of people goes, it's a Dune ripoff, and I never really saw it, having read Dune before, because there's a lot of elements in a lot of books that are similar, in different universes. But this series has really brought home that there are a lot of seminal ideas from Dune that have been used in Star Wars, and it really brings it to the fore. And when they use the same imagery, like the glowing spice in the sand kind of thing, is it a homage or is it a ripoff?
Yeah, no, exactly right. Dale has made a mention about the Silver Fox, and of course that's good old Cobb Vanth. He was a bit of a cool dude and he was a good guy. Which worked out really, really well. Good old Spankers. I wonder about whether they'll bring back Leia as a digital recreation of her. Possibly not, because Carrie Fisher's passed away. But if they get approval from I think Billy Lord, you never know. And if they do, they'll probably end up doing an excellent job of it too. Even Christie's agreed with you. 2 shots only. So there you go, nice and easy. We were just making a joke about the fact that spice and Dune all go hand in hand. We don't expect to be a crossover. So, but when we spend that much time in Tatooine, you could easily argue that the Krayt Dragons are like the worms. So, yeah. What the big what? And what were the egg bugs in the spice? Yeah, I don't know. It's up until these series came up, no one really cared about the whole spice thing. I mean, even when we went to the spice mines of Kessel, no one, like in Solo, no one really cared about the spice. But let's move on. Otherwise, we'll never get to the end of this. Sorry, we're going to say?
It is crazy how throwaway lines become entire series. The Spice Mines of Kessel was a line, the Clone Wars was a line, and then, there's entire mythologies built on these things, what were probably just lines that made George Lucas chuckle as a bit of backstory.
Yeah, exactly right. So don't forget, kiddies, we are in the Book of Boba Fett here, right? So it's actually important that we follow the main story of that story. And, of course, we don't. We jump on good old Din's N1 Starfighter, the Razor Crest Mark II, and we bugger off to this place. Now, everybody's been asking, where is this? Because this is clearly where Luke Skywalker has his temple and all the rest of it. Some people have assumed it could be Yavin 4, because I think in the expanded universe, Luke did set up a temple in Yavin 4, and Ejaan Kloss is the other one, or Ejaan Kloss. That was from Rise of Skywalker, the jungle planet they're all on. So, but as of now, this place is unknown. There's no name for it at all as to where we are. And, of course, good old Din lands there, and the first thing we come across is R2. It's like, oh shit! Okay, nice to see a familiar face. How'd you find that?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking what Dave was thinking. This looks like the same place where you saw the flashback of them training Leia.
It would be the same place, because that's where his temple was. Yeah, exactly right.
So I was wondering if we might get a cameo from Princess Leia in this, or maybe in the future at some point. So I won't get ahead of ourselves with what happens this episode and what I think is going to happen, though. So, yeah, it was good to see R2 again. Probably one of the things about Star Wars is the droids are always going to be a constant through everything.
Yep, totally agree. And Daniel did confirm, yes, they were on Yavin 4. So even though nobody knows where Luke's temple is based, if you were, because there's no contradictory evidence against it, you can say it's Yavin 4 for now. It's a big planet. It could be anywhere. So why not? Yes, indeed. Yes, Evan Christie agreed. Yes, the young Jedi were on the temple of Yavin 4. So until someone says otherwise in canon, let's go for the saga and saying it's Yavin 4. So very groovy. Now, this kind of freaked me out a little bit, right? Big ass ants. Now, I'm not a fan of ants at the best of times. And just because they're robotic. I mean, I kind of found I didn't like this at all. They're like running around everywhere building the thing. And I go, you know what? Yeah, why couldn't they make them a different shape? Why ants?
It was one of those things. The strange thing in me, there was this old game I had like in the 70s or 80s where you had to build like these ants a piece at a time. And they remind me of that. So I don't know if it was a toy homage, probably just making a new design that was practical in Star Wars.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance those ants exist in real life, like we've seen with the dogs that were on Mos Espa. They're actually real robot dogs, so it wouldn't surprise me if the ants are real robot ants. They've obviously enhanced them a little bit, but I bet some university somewhere in the world has built them for real, and they've used them in the show. So, yeah, exactly right, Gavin. Yeah, War of the Worlds. So I thought this was kind of funny, right? So R2 shuts down, right? And I thought, dude, and he's just waving his hand in front of it, like a Jedi, as it were. And it's like, dude, you got to learn from 3PO. If you want to wake up R2, you give him a smack in the head, from A New Hope. Wake up, wake up. So I thought that was kind of, that was a little gag there for anybody who may or may not have picked up on it. What did you think?
Yeah. I did think it was funny. This is the second droid we've had just shut down to avoid having anything to do with the Mandalorian. The other one was the rat droid in Boba Fett.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. So everybody shuts down in this show. So there you go. Grant said the ants look like something you could build from the original droid factory toy. Yeah, I suppose so. So imagine that. You build those back in the 70s when the toy came out, and suddenly you go, you watch 40 years from now, this will be the in thing. Be ants on, let's assume it's Yavin 4. So exactly right. Now, this one I found was interesting, right? This is a classic trope, a problem that you had in the Mandalorian series, and it carried over into this episode, right? When Din is by himself, he has to explain everything that he's doing. Oh, how long do I have to wait here for? Where is everybody? But all this talk because he's got his helmet on and you can't see any expression. So he has to explain what he's doing so the audience knows what he's doing. Oh, do you want me to sit down and wait? Oh, do I have to lay down for a while? Oh, where is this? Where's that? Where's Luke Skywalker? I'm here to see the kid. And I don't know if you picked up on that, but it's something that was very, very prevalent in the original Mandalorian series where Din had to explain everything all the time because we couldn't work out what he was doing.
Yeah, it's one of those tricks I guess they use in a lot of TV series and movies just to keep the audience up to date with the characters' motivations. I did find in the Mandalorian series that they did it really well, where he was such a good actor just from a tilt of the head or something without any dialogue. They were able to portray exactly how he was feeling or what he was thinking. And this goes to the other end where he sort of basically recites the script. So they can do it right and they can sometimes, do it a bit wrong too.
Christie's come up with a classic. He says, is that a bench? Right? Yes. So he has to say that for the audience, right? Rather than just having them build a bench and he just sits down quietly. So it's a little annoying that he's got to do it, but we know why he's doing it. But it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, you have to explain everything. Oh, is that a bench? Oh, do I have to sit down on this bench? Oh, do I have to lay down on this bench? How long do I have to wait here for? And it's like, oh my God. So yeah, good old Pedro's voice work is getting a bit of a workover. What can I say? Eh?
Well, at least he didn't say, well, I'm going to have a nap until someone turns up.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, of course, Luke Skywalker. Now, is it still the Book of Boba Fett, right? Don't forget that, kids. This is the key thing, right? So we see Fluky Luke. We've seen him already. He looks absolutely spectacular. Oh, my God. Whose back of the head could that possibly be? And, yes, enter stage left. The old cash cow, as we discussed last week. It's only been 5 episodes since the end of The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. And they said, nah, chuck the kid in because he's the cash cow. He's the one who brings in all the money. And I couldn't believe it. I thought if they could invent any story they could to get Grogu back in, sure enough, they've done it. Now, before I get back to you, right? I'm going to get back to you in a sec, right? I found out that there's a leaked memo that has come out from Disney, right? And I was able to get a hold of it, right? Because I know people who know people, right? And so I got hold of this special memo from Disney. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this before, right? But I'm releasing it here now, right? And it says, if you read this, to Lucasfilm management, please ensure Grogu appears in everything, even if his presence is completely unrelated to the narrative of whichever series you are producing. Just make it happen. What do you reckon?
Do you think he'll be in Cassian Andor before he's born?
Far out. I mean, it's great for this episode. It's great. He's in there and Luke's there and he's training all that. But what's got to do with the Book of Boba Fett? Nothing. Zero. Right? It's totally unrelated. And it was like 2 weeks in a row, as you just said it earlier. That is damn frustrating. And they brought Grogu back in a completely unrelated fashion to the story. And it was like, far out, guys.
Yeah. I think I've had a lot of discussions with different customers and different people coming in and out in the shop since it was on. And the thing seems to be, it isn't a bad show. And if they called it like Star Wars Stories or Star Wars Underworld or something like that, it'd be fine. But because they have gone and called it the Book of Boba Fett, for anyone like me who's a massive Boba Fett fan, it's been underwhelming. And then if the changes they made to the character were justified within the story, I'd be happy. But they seem to have made these changes, and then he's been swept to the side for the last couple of episodes as well. So it's disappointing as a Boba Fett series for me.
Yeah, if they had worked on the view, it was like Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina and Tales from Jabba's Palace. And if it had said Tales from Star Wars or Tales from Tatooine or whatever, and the Boba Fett thing was just an offshoot of that, not a problem. But you are right. It is the Book of Boba Fett. And it's like, now we're stuck on a planet with Luke and Grogu. And it's like, all right, how does this relate to the story? So even though it works for this episode, it's great. It doesn't work for the overall narrative. And that's the problem. And it's very funny because and it's very funny that Dale's watching, but I was on another review show recently and I got criticized for some of these views, saying it's all Star Wars. We should just love it and embrace it. And it's all fantastic. But by the same token, if there are things that just don't work or don't match up, and I know for a fact, I'm not the only one who thinks this way now, especially after what's occurred the week prior. Yeah, some people are scratching their heads going, yeah, where are we going with this? So anyway, not to worry.
Boba Fett's always been one of my favorite characters, so I'm one of the core audience that they're aiming at. And if it worries me and I haven't really been satisfied, more frustrated, that is a problem for them, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. Having said all that, though, by that token, push that aside, the whole Luke Grogu thing was well done, right? So we've pushed our arguments aside for now and said, all right, we already know what they are. Let's push them aside. Let's just continue on as per normal, right? I've got to love it, right? So this is going to be a version of a banquet, right? They're all just floating in the air, the frogs. It was just cute. These frogs have only got one eye in the middle too, by the way, one-eyed frogs. So, so there you go.
This is the beginning of the sequence, which I like to call, Jedis are assholes, aren't they? Where you just see for the next training sequence, if you were someone who was training to be a Jedi, you could see how what they do to people and how they train them can be a bit abusive. Grogu is hungry. He wants a frog. Luke doesn't let him have it. Then he shows him all the frogs and still doesn't let him have one.
I tell you what I was thinking he was going to do. I thought he was going to bring all the frogs over and just line them all up, and Grogu's, and it's like one goes in, another one, another. I thought, you were a prick, Luke. But there you go.
I thought would have been really cool if he'd let all the frogs drop and Grogu had a really disappointed reaction, and then he might have like flicked his pinky and a frog actually jumped into Grogu's lap or something.
Yeah. But you are right. He's about to eat one because he obviously eats them live, which means that Yoda would also eat live food as well. So you would think so. Good old Yoda when he's chowing down on a bug or two. It's no big deal. It's all good. And and you're right. Luke says, "No, you can't have that." And I'll just like tempt you with what all the frogs are in the water, but you can't get any. And Dale has mentioned here, it's not done yet. Wait till see what happens at the final episode. Yep, that'll be next 2 days actually. So it's very, very exciting stuff. Yeah, you do. Oh, I love it. Gavin says, food delivery without the drones. Totally agree with you. So here we go. So Christie's mentioned if the Luke Grogu stuff was in The Mandalorian, it would have been great. Well, it would have fitted, obviously, because Din's a part of what's going on here.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not being negative about the show. I actually really like the show as a Star Wars show. I'm negative that they've umbrellaed it under a Boba Fett theme where that's a bit of a porky pie.
Yep, exactly right. Hang on, sorry. Grogu is older than Luke. No, well, that's obviously, because Grogu is 50 at this point. He's 50 at this point, and Luke is only, what would Luke be? Shit. Luke was born on Empire Day, so 40. I have to do the maths on that one. So, Anyway, So a menu log for Jedi's. Totally agree with you. But yeah, if you like your frogs in the water, have a bit of a whale of a time. I thought this was not just a nice shot. This is like harking back to The Empire Strikes Back with Luke and Yoda, except this time it's Luke and Grogu. So there's a lot of things here that echo back to the original trilogy, which is kind of groovy. And I do like the fact that Luke's still wearing the Jedi outfit. The Return of the Jedi costume. Somewhere in his travels, he changes to something completely different for the Force Awakens costume. But I did like the fact that it's still the Jedi fatigues.
I kind of figure I wear the same kind of T-shirts I've worn for the last 30 years. It's people get, stuck in what they were wearing in their teens, I think, because they think that's the best fashion. So everyone else in the universe probably thinks the Jedis look pretty out of date, but Luke's comfortable in his skin with what he's wearing.
Yeah. Okay. So Christy said Luke would be in his 30s. That would make sense because it's like he was born on Empire Day. He was 19 in A New Hope. So maybe even younger than that, actually. So I'm sure that's maths. So there you go.
Jedi? What? This is 6 years after Jedi, is it?
Yes, 5 years, actually.
So he'd be about 31, 32.
All right, cool. As I said, I suck with maths. And Grogu is the same age as Vader. Yeah, as I said, I suck with maths, but you're probably correct. So I'm not going to argue with you guys at all. Now, I thought this was interesting, right? So the way he pats him on the head, it is one of those, who's a good boy? It's like patting the favorite dog. But the thing is, of course, he's going to be revealing all these bad memories, this really, really bad traumatic stuff. And I thought, yeah, good on you, Luke. That's just because he wants to know what's happened. It's a good sequence. It works well. But I thought, hang on, the kid has probably tried his best to try and forget what happened back in the back in Order 66. And, of course, Luke just brings it all to the forefront, which, of course, then brings us to this sequence here. And this looks great. It was fantastic. It was an Order 66 moment. And if you notice, because of the way it's shrouded, Grogu is in a hiding spot. He's been tucked away somewhere. He's hiding from something. So did you notice that?
Yeah, I did. Hiding or almost like the, the floating bassinet thing that the Mandalorian had as well, that pod. It could be something like that too.
Rod said, A New Hope is 19. We know that. Empire is 22. Jedi is 23. Book of Boba Fett is 28. Okay, you guys can fight over the maths. We'll discuss the episode. And, of course, that we see Grogu's point of view. And, of course, the poor bastard, he's about 25 at this point, and he would absolutely be, like, crapping himself. So you can understand it's a very, very traumatic experience. And the thing I found interesting is that the irony being, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, of course, but in Revenge of the Sith, all the clones were CGI, right? I mean, that was the thing that George Lucas pushed. So in Attack of the Clones, they're all CGI. In Revenge of the Sith, they're all CGI. But in this, they're actual dudes in suits. And I thought that was actually kind of an interesting sort of take, which is good. It worked well and it looked far more realistic. And just quickly, I did think that all that was missing was a certain Hayden Christensen as Mr. Darth Vader. That would have been an absolute ball terror if you had been in this. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I think all bets are off with cameos. We can expect anyone from the Star Wars universe to turn up at any time. And you would think Vader's obsession with hunting down and killing the last of the Jedi, he would have been around at this time doing that kind of work. I did think it was good that they were all in costume, like actors in costume. At this point with the clones, I don't know if it matters so much because they have got it to the point where it is so good sometimes you can't tell. I mean, if you look at the Death Troopers last season, they were awesome as well.
Yeah, it was just an observation because I thought, it was interesting because you wouldn't digitally create the clone troopers for this sequence. You'd use people in suits, but I don't know if people remembered that the original clones were never people in suits. They were all CGI. And I thought, had this sequence had Vader in it, Hayden Christensen, as because you can obviously make Luke look young. You can probably make Hayden look young as well in this sequence. That would have been a nice little touch. He's in there slicing a dice on the Jedis with the clones. I reckon that would have been grouse. I mean, it's more fan service, but still, imagine that. And, of course, Luke is remembering that through Grogu. So he's like, oh, my God, there's my dad killing these Jedi. Heck, yeah.
Is this actually a new force power we've seen? I mean, we've seen it with Vulcans in Mind Melds, but I don't remember, I guess, Ray in
well, you got to remember, as the series has progressed, new powers have come and gone. Don't forget, even in Phantom Menace, the Jedi, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon could do that quick rush-off thing that we never saw ever again. And, of course, in Rise of Skywalker, they can transport lightsabers, and Rey even had the ability to heal and all sorts of stuff. So they do invent things for the narrative of the story. So
I'll tell you what, that super speed would come in handy if a clone Death Squad turned up for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you do wonder why they didn't use it more often. Sarah, good to see Sarah's joining us. Grogu's special power is trauma repression, which has now been brought up into the surface thanks to the good old Fluky Luke.
Sarah
So,
brings up something I wanted to point out. So far, Grogu's day has been denied food and given nightmare visions. Let's keep account of what happens when you're a training Jedi.
yeah, exactly right. So Rod's still going with the mathematics. Well, there's years between Empire and Jedi and Post, but are currently the only year apart. That is correct, between Empire and Jedi. Spanker has written War and Peace here. He's not, because he's a huge Boba Fett fan, as we well know. So he used to actually wear a Boba Fett costume once upon a time and get paid for it. So there you go. Yes, we've already discussed that as to in the previous episode as to what we thought about Din and Boba. And I think there is definitely a school of thought to say, had Boba not been presented at all in any of the series, it would have worked just fine. But it is what it is, and we're just going to plow on regardless. So there you go. Any cameos by Jar Jar Binks? Oh, miss a lucky bit of Jar Jar Binks. Now, speaking of cameos, so Ahsoka makes an appearance. So we've got everybody coming back now. And I like the fact that she said she's an old friend of the family. I thought that was a very, very clever line. And it's interesting that she just pops up all over the place. So if you remember in The Mandalorian, she didn't give a rat's ass about Grogu's future. Now all of a sudden she's a bit concerned for him. But I don't even know why she was even there. But it was good that she made a reappearance before she gets into her own series. What do you think?
That was one of those things. Why is she there? Because Luke sort of says to her, am I going to see you again? Like he's sort of almost surprised she's there. Has she been hanging around with Luke for a while? Because it doesn't sound like it when she goes and talks to him and says, oh, like you're like your father and things like that. So did she just make an appearance because the Mandalorian was going to be there, or has she been hanging out for training or training Luke in some way or reminiscing about the past? I do wonder.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a bit unclear. I mean, it was good that they put it in. It was, as we said, the fan service. Oh my God, Ahsoka's here. But why? And yeah, it's a bit unusual. But anyway, we'll cross those bridges. Sarah's mentioned here she's aggressively looking forward to the Grey Jedi Order of Ahsoka, Grogu, and Ezra, who's from Rebels. Yes, the old saga of the Grey Jedi. In fact, we're going to touch on that a little bit later on, funnily enough. While in training, if they only knew the good in the galaxy, then you would have been denied the truth. Oh, that's very, very deep for this show, Mr. Gavin. We're just looking at a TV show and just reviewing it accordingly. So there you go. As someone pointed out, it was very interesting. We're seeing the early stages of the Luke's Jedi Temple being constructed. And, of course, in The Force Awakens, we see being deconstructed, so to speak, with a few extra explosions. And, yeah, it's kind of groovy. So for those who didn't put two and two together, this is where it started, and that's where it ended.
Well, for R2-D2, he faithfully was there when that was constructed and then watched it all get ripped down again, almost in the same position.
Yeah, exactly right. Good old Deb. Good to see Deb's join us, which is absolutely fantastic. Got the impression that R2 was in contact with both Ahsoka and Luke, and is the connection.
Could be.
Yeah, we're probably having to string some bows together and put some dots together to make everything sort of match up, because ultimately Din is wanting to see Grogu. He's just turned up out of the blue. Ahsoka's there saying, nah, don't go and see him. And you can ask yourself, well, what's the point? What are we trying to achieve here? If Din, no, I don't know. I'm sort of losing myself in my own thought. Anything you want to add in? Because
I just wanted to point out that Ahsoka was portrayed so well. They must have gone back and looked at her posture through the cartoons. I didn't notice this, but through the CG stuff, she often stands almost slouched with one hand on a hip and the other hand by her side. And they did it in this show as well, which really shows, how deep and how much love there is for the character when they're sort of getting into character that much.
Yeah, I like this one from Rod. Luke loves his igloos. That's actually very, very cool. And I agree with you, Deb. Yeah, obviously Ahsoka and Luke have met before, and hopefully they show their first meeting in her series, because it was seemed to be a little bit like, oh, these two people are together. Oh, what are the chances of that? Now, this one I liked, right? So Din classes Grogu as a foundling, whereas Ahsoka says he's now a Padawan. Actually, technically, they're both wrong, because a foundling means he's like a young child when he gets found by Din, now who was a foundling himself. But Grogu's 50 years old, so he's obviously been around the traps a little bit. So I think to suddenly say he's a foundling for the Mandalorians is probably stringing a bit of a long bow. And Ahsoka says he's a Padawan. Well, it's not really, because the Jedi Temple hasn't started yet. The school hasn't started, and they actually say that Grogu will be, not is, he is the first student. So it's playing with technicalities. But of the two, I would argue that Ahsoka's correct. So it's semantics, but interesting.
I kind of think when Grogu is called the child because obviously he's a juvenile, and if the race ages at a slower rate, I presume their mental development is slower as well. So probably from a certain point of view, he is a child and a foundling. And this is the interesting thing where you have the correct, I guess, the correct interpretation from two different religions. So they're almost fighting over him before they give him the choice.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. And Dale's made a mention about Ahsoka. Yeah, you're right. They're obviously drip feeding her in this series, preparing her for her own series, and that'll be good to see when it comes out. Gavin has asked, does he have a Sci-Fi Zone mug? Yeah, that's me. So we'll move on. And I love this one from Rod. They're both wrong. Grogu is clearly a Mogwai. Yeah, exactly right. So don't get him wet don't feed him after midnight. So there you go. And yeah, it's semantics about as to how like all these comments are coming through regarding his age and all the rest of it. So it's completely insane. What is Grogu's rate of maturity? Well, we can actually put two and two together because Yoda, remember, he was 900 years old when he died, but he'd been training Jedi for 800 years, which means that when he turned 100, he was ready to teach Jedi. So Grogu is now currently 50. So in the next 50 years, he's got to mature very, very quickly to the point where he can walk, talk, and actually train others in the use of the Force. So it's playing with numbers, but that's how you could interpret it. So there you go.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Certainly worthy of some good nerdy late night discussions. Absolutely love it. Speaking of things that I love, this was a nice cinematic moment with the four of them. So you look up there, and this tiny dot right there is good old Grogu. I thought this was just a nice thing. And there's some interesting points that's coming out of this because, as Ahsoka says, Grogu misses you a great deal. And of course, as we all know, attachment is the path that leads to the dark side. So did you pick up on this at all?
Yeah, and this is where I am interested in the whole Grey Jedi thing, because the more you see about the Jedi and the more you've seen of the history in the different movies, I don't know if their actual, I guess, philosophy is correct, where maybe the trauma of not being attached to anyone can also lead to the dark side. If you isolate yourself from love and those kind of feelings, how can that be a positive trait to do? Especially,
yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And there's I've had other shows where I've discussed this in great detail about the whole Jedi Order and what the Force and what Yoda did and all the rest of it. We can't cover it off here because it's the wrong show. Yeah. But you are right, and I'll get to it because I've actually got a point later on. Because I actually mentioned about the balance of the Force, and there's actually something in this series that actually covers that off, which is particularly
anyway. Going through Grogu's day, now we've got old friend turns up, and Jedi refuse to let him see them. So that's 3 negatives so far for the Jedi, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. It was a good thing to say, like, why was he there? Din was there for himself, not necessarily for Grogu. He wants to pass on the gift and all the rest. But it's very psychological and a bit in depth, which is particularly good. But yeah, but it doesn't relate to the Book of Boba Fett. Nah. So there you go. All right, here we go. Sarah, I do believe that some of Grogu's childish countenance is related to trauma. Yes, that's been discussed before. He's got the old PTSD from the Order 66 days, and that's completely true. So he may not mature as fast as he would had he grown up normally.
And the one thing I think Dags and I discussed, which is relevant to this, is the Mandalorian is part of an offshoot cult, and the Jedi also seen as a cult, I guess, by the rest of the universe. But the Jedi actually, what they believe in is true, because we can see them use the Force, and they do have powers because they train and master it. But the Mandalorian is more skills of using weapons and things like that. So from, I guess, a spiritual level, maybe the Jedi are the more spiritual religion.
Yeah. So Gavin, there's a difference between attachment and being a caring person. What we're suggesting here, and this is what they say in the whole Jedi Order thing, that if you're attached to something and then you lose it for whatever reason, you get a bit narky. It happens in real life, right? You have something you like and it goes, you get a bit shitty. And of course, if you're a Force user, that then leads you down the dark side. That's roughly, in very short terms, what they're on about. I do like this. There's an excellent comment here. Colin said, when Yoda turns 100, does he get a letter from the Queen?
The Queen Amidala.
Oh dear, absolutely love it. And Christie's followed up and said, no, he's not a part of the Commonwealth. So you're exactly right. The galaxy far, far away is not exactly connected with the monarchy. What can we say? Now, okay, we're sticking with Grogu. I know there's a lot of stuff. We can go on for hours about this. This I did laugh. Grogu jumps, right? Luke says, Luke, can you jump? And obviously they had a whale of a time with the puppet in this show. They did so much with him. It was great. And I got to admit, when he did the little jump and he only jumps like that much, I mean, you had to laugh at that. I mean, that was a very, very cute moment, eh? What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I thought that was good. There was a lot of fun. And this is what, but I love this. I love the training with Grogu and Luke. And, you know, it's actually amazing to see you've got two digital creations and a puppet creation, and there's no actors in there, and they're interacting, and you totally buy into it, and you totally believe they have a relationship. And I 100% believe both of those characters were real while I'm watching it. They did an amazing job.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Now, there's 2 comments here I've got to bring up. Jedi understand the family bonds, and that is why old Luke voiced the Jedi had to end. Yeah, there's a big discussion as to the way the Jedi Order was set up and the reason why it was set up the way it was set up. That's bad English, but you know what I'm trying to say. But we're not covering it off here because this isn't the episode to do that. Deb has said, what if it all relates to the Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian, Grogu, or side stories, a bigger picture? Now, we've discussed this in previous episodes of the show. That is completely fine. But the problem is the series is called The Book of Boba Fett, right? So it's needed to be part of the Mandalorian series, season 3, episodes 1 and 2, as an example, because poor old Boba Fett's been left behind at this stage, even as of right this point, stuck behind a table talking about the Pike Syndicate, and we've just forgotten about him. So at this point, we're an episode and a half in from like last week and the week before, and to say, well, nothing's happening with him. So you're right, it could actually end up being part of a bigger thing. But poor old Boba Fett, who's got his name in the title, is just nowhere to be seen, and we're off doing something completely unrelated to this story. And I'd be surprised if Luke and or Grogu make an appearance in the last episode of saving the day against the Pike. So that's what we discussed. We covered this off last week in great detail, and of course that's what's got a few fans a bit upset. So hopefully that covers that off. Yeah, and you're right, Dale. You're right. It's not done yet, but you can see. That's why we said, and I just want to cover this off. If you watch all 7 episodes back to back when the series is finished, 1 year from today, right? Suddenly episodes, what are we now, 5 and 6 are just not going to gel at all. It's like, hang on, we were talking here and now we're there. So anything you want to say before we move on?
Yeah, by bringing in this episode Ahsoka and Grogu and Luke into it, it's sort of a galactic events episode in the scale of Star Wars, and then to have the last episode go back to the Pikes, it's almost you've expanded it, and then you've gone back to the smaller story that's Boba Fett, which is not good, I guess, story design. You want the finale to be the biggest episode. I mean, it could be. We haven't seen next week's episode. I really hope it is, so I can't judge it yet. But I really hope that it tops this episode, gives Boba Fett a good send-off for the final episode.
Deb has mentioned he's busy learning how to ride Rancors. Well, you would hope to think he will ride one. They've certainly led up to it in the last episode. That's absolutely totally agree with you on that one. All right, I have to move on. Otherwise, I'm going to be here for like 3 hours. I'm going to admit, even in this, I don't know if anybody picked up on this through his training bit. Obviously, this is replicating what happened in The Empire Strikes Back with Yoda on his back. Even in these sequences, like with the digital recreation of Mark Hamill's face, shit, they did a good job. It's just one of those little bits of detail, and yeah, it's very, very groovy. And it's kind of ironic because, as Dale said, in the words of Freddie Mercury, it's silly to be precise, yet this is actually very precise. So maybe it's not silly at all. So, yeah, there you go. I just wanted to chuck that in because I don't know if anybody else ever noticed that, but I did a freeze frame in this intentionally and go, wow, that's what you call attention to detail.
Well, fandom is notorious for nitpicking, but anyone who nitpicks the look of Luke in this really is nitpicking, because I don't think you're going to get much better than what they presented in this episode.
Yeah, exactly right. So I am trying to move on with this episode rather than the whole Din Djarin taking over the series thing, because we have sort of covered that sort of ad infinitum. But this is where I wanted to bring this up. So Luke says to Grogu, it's all about the balance in the Force. And what the balance of the Force is, and this is where the Grey Jedi come from, it's the idea of the light side and the dark side coexisting together, not having all of one or all of the other. And that was the problem that the Jedi Order had. They all had all of one, which is supposed to be the light side, and the Sith obviously had the dark side. You need to be able to, that's the balance. That's what it is. That's what a Grey Jedi is. Someone who can actually have both light and dark together. So in other words, if you do want to crack the shits over something, you can do that, providing it doesn't take you over and you still remain a good person overall. So that's what that principle is. And I think in the story, when Luke reads through the Jedi Temple books, which we found from Arc 2, he learns, oh, shit, hang on. This is how it was meant to have been in the first place. It's just that the way it had been for the past 900 years when Yoda was in charge, they took it too far to one side. So it's all very philosophical, but that's what it's all about.
We know that Yoda didn't really read them because apparently they weren't great page turners, according to his review of the books.
That's exactly right. They weren't page turning. Exactly right. So, and that's the thing. So there's a long discussion you can have about it, but that's what it is, putting it very, very simply. You learn to live with both, which is effectively how human beings exist. You can have, and we've discussed this before in other shows, you can be a good, caring, kind person, but you can still get a bit nasty from time to time if someone, get a bit of road rage or whatever, or, your TV won't turn on, or mom just yapping on too much. You go, hurry up and stop talking, nags. Yeah, it's all fine, but it doesn't consume you. That's the key thing.
Or your mum gets taken by Tuscans, so you go out and destroy the village, women and children.
Exactly right. And I think even Dale's agreeing with me on this one. Yes, thank you very much. So, yeah, that's what the grey Jedi concept is all about, and balance with the Force. Adzi has said, why couldn't the Grogu story arc span the entire series? I think in retrospect, if they could, they would. And no doubt Grogu will be reappearing again. And with that in mind, didn't you just want him to fall in the water? Oh, I was waiting for it. He's going to drop into the drink. That would have been just... What do you reckon?
Well, again, with the training stuff, and now he gets shocked by a training remote. So what a great day it is to be a Jedi Padawan.
Yeah, exactly right. It's history repeating itself regarding Luke and his training, and of course the remote does exactly the same thing. I mean, it's good. It was almost like you needed a separate series, the training of a Jedi for Grogu and all the rest of it. We sort of went on a massive tangents in this episode, but it did look good, I've got to say. So, yeah, I just put this in because I thought it looked very, very groovy. And of course, Grogu is a cute character no matter what.
I have a question, Dags.
Yep.
Regarding the training remotes. Was the training remote something that was on the Millennium Falcon, or did Obi-Wan bring it onto the Falcon?
That is a damn good question. It just miraculously appeared out of absolutely nowhere. I don't think there's an answer for that one. And
because I thought it was something that it went from the Star Wars, the original trilogy, as something that was maybe a game or a training thing, to a specifically Jedi thing, training the kids in the Jedi Temple. So I guess Obi-Wan must have had it under his robes and pulled it out for Luke.
Well, I also thought it was funny. Why would you have a helmet that has a thing that comes down and you can't see a damn thing? And with the blast shield down, I can't even see. It's like, what's the point of having a blast shield? Luckily, we had one of those on hand. So there we go. Unbelievable. All right. Oh, my goodness, all these comments. Gavin, wasn't Dagobah supposed to be a grey planet balanced with the Force? No, I wouldn't have thought so. We've discussed the whole thing with the dark side cave and the tree and all the rest of it. Why the props about Anakin was right. He did bring balance to the Force. Yes, he did in the grand scheme of things. So, yes, but then the sequel trilogy came into play and all that went out the window. Where are we? Hang on.
I think Gavin is
Billows had to pop up next week. And I'm sorry, I'm not even reading these now. So I'm surprised to me that Ahsoka and Luke were proud of Grogu when he ruined the remote. Actually, that's a very interesting point. Now, I wanted to bring that up. Was the destruction of the remote planned? Is that what you meant to do? Because to me, it was like, hang on. He's like, it's a training thing, right? So that's like taking your training, whatever, like you're training on a computer and you then smash the computer. And I thought, why did he destroy the remote? And I thought, is that meant to signify anything? So, Deb obviously picked up on it, and I certainly did. So, I don't know if you have anything you want to say.
That too. I kind of thought it's one of those things where if the Jedi younglings were training in the temple and all of them were doing the like zit, 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 and one of them just like destroyed the remote, he's the top of the class.
Yeah. I thought it was bizarre because I thought you finished, done, you put it away. I mean, Luke didn't destroy the remote on the Falcon. I thought, and Grogu just smashes it, and then Luke says, "Good on you, dude. Excellent work." You go, all right, no worries. There you go. Christy says, "I don't think what Obi-Wan had under his robes." It's like, look, what have we here? So, yes, exactly right. And Spankin, ever the reliable Spankin, came from the Industrial Light and Magic Prop Department. Yeah, exactly right. Han allegedly used the remote to hone his targeting skills. I suppose it's a pretty small area though to be shooting in the ship, and I suppose so. But yes, here's one we prepared earlier. Now we discussed this so we see Ahsoka and Luke together in this scene, and we do wonder, did she ever discuss Anakin with him and say, well, I actually knew your old man, and this is what he was like and all the rest. And it's a real pity we didn't see it in the sequence. And of course you couldn't because it's a long scene, obviously. And as Deb mentioned earlier, if we see this in Ahsoka, that'd probably be pretty groovy. But you do wonder how much he's told him. What do you think?
It is one of those interesting things where, do we know if Anakin has manifested himself to Luke after Return of the Jedi? Wouldn't it have been cool if, as we faded out, you slowly saw younger Anakin fade in, like they were going to have a catch-up or something like that? It's something that isn't beyond the realms of what we know the Jedi do.
Yeah, because as far as we know, Luke doesn't know much about Anakin at all. And I mean, he knows Anakin was the father, but he wouldn't know much about his upbringing. Depending on how much Yoda told him, which by the sounds of it wasn't much at all. So Ahsoka would know all these details about what Anakin was like when he was a Jedi. And you do think they'd have a sit down and a massive powwow and say, well, tell me about my father, because what I got told, he was like a mining on a spice freighter and all sort of business. And now you find out he's something completely different. And only, in fact, if anything, Luke could tap into her memory. Imagine that. Yeah. So if he can do it with Grogu, he'd be doing the mind meld with Ahsoka, and he would actually see what Anakin looked like in the flesh, because as far as we know, aside from the spiritual ghost thing, he's got no idea what Anakin looked like. So, yeah,
well, one character that's forgotten about here is he could also ask about his mother, Padme, because, she was involved with the Clone Wars as well, and she never comes into it. And Luke would be just as interested in knowing his mother's history, surely, as his father's.
That is a very, very good point, especially because he makes a point in Jedi saying he doesn't remember at all, right?
Yeah.
And that's a very good point. So he can get a whole family history just from her, hopefully from her memories. That's opening up a massive, a good can of worms. So I agree with Dale. Mind blown. That's exactly what it would be too, which is particularly groovy. She does say he was like his father, but
yeah,
Luke doesn't really know anything about Anakin aside from what Yoda would have told him, which is probably very, very little. And we know that Ben didn't say much at all. So Ahsoka's the one with all the memories. So, she would like to see how that transpires. Grant would say which ghost he would see young or old. It should have been the old Anakin, but anyway, splitting hairs on that one. So anyway, let's move on. All right, so we finished with Luke and Grogu. It was all great. The fans have thought this is the greatest thing in the entire universe. Din gets in his N1, pisses back to the palace. First thing I see, Slave 1 is missing from the parking spot. So I think obviously the boss has got his own dedicated space now, which is particularly groovy. And we're getting back to Tatooine, which means we're back to the old Boba Fett story, which is what the series is all about. Were you excited? I was excited. I'm ready to go. It's like, what's going to happen now? What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, I was waiting for the rest of this episode purely to be all about Boba Fett, what they were planning, what he'd been doing while we were on the other storyline for all this long. And then we come into it, and what do we get?
Christie's got a good point. A classic movie trope is that fathers are most important, but mothers are ignored. And that's happened even right back to as far as A New Hope. As like Luke never asked about his mother. He only ever mentioned about the father. So that's a good observation, Christie. And here we go from Sarah. As much as I want that conversation, I'm glad they didn't put in the book. They already won this. Yeah, you're right. And I agree with you. It would have taken up way too much screen time. But you do wonder what they know. So, yes, indeed. All right. So, I like this from Gavin when he's parked on the ship. Wait, that's my spot. All right. So, got the band back together. So, the mod squad's back. You've got Chrysanthemum hiding over here in the corner. You've got Boba Fett over there. No helmet as always. Wow. We're getting into the meat of the story. What's going on? And I thought this was particularly groovy. And, of course, the problem was Boba Fett is finally back. He's got no helmet and he's got no dialogue. And, honestly, the way he reacts to what's going on around him is like he's got no clue whatsoever as to what's happening. It's almost like they're filming the sequence in between takes and Tamura's just sitting there going, yeah, it's all good. I'm just sitting here just waiting for them to call action. And they just use that footage. He looked like he was completely clueless. So I thought, dude, what are they doing to you, son? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. The one thing that I have complained every single episode, the actual Boba Fett storyline is very slight. If you kind of go, well, what's the story and what's he's done? He kind of has wandered into town once or twice and come back, and they haven't really advanced his plan or anything at all. The only thing we've seen that's had any depth have been the flashbacks, which have probably been some of the coolest parts of the show, but I really wanted there to be more intrigue, more plotting, more action, more shootings and killings, more bounties, and just more what you expect to get when you hear they're going to make the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, totally agree. I love this from Christie. This is an absolute classic. Yay, finally! Oh, crap. And I thought it was so funny. Fennec finally gets to say something. I mean, even Fennec has been dumped really badly in the show. We said from the very first episode that her character creation has been very, very minimal, right? She was overshadowed by Boba the whole time. Now both of them have been overshadowed by Din in just 2 episodes. And it was like, poor Fennec, she got to say something in this episode, and Boba didn't say a word, as was, where are we? Yes, as Deb said here, like the Murderville show, they didn't give him a script. Yeah. So everybody's getting overwiped by poor old Mr. Din. So, yes, indeed. can I say? But we get to see the mod squad. They don't get any dialogue, but hey, they're all back after running around discovering that Mok Shai's has buggered off out of the planet. And as I do like the Major Domo saying it was a planned holiday. I thought that was actually very clever. But the hero of the show, and this replicates exactly what happened in Return of the Jedi when Luke joined in on the Rebel briefing and everybody go, hey! Now, in the book, it was basically everybody cheered, right? He just turns up and, of course, all hail the coolest character of the show. And what did I say once before? That if you put Boba and Din in the same scene together, everyone is going to look at Din. And I think that's exactly what happened here. What do you reckon?
Yeah. He has the shinier armor and he keeps it on.
Yeah, exactly right. And poor Boba still has, as we said, no dialogue and all the rest of it. So, but anyway, Din says, I know where to get some help, and he nicks off in his ship. I've got to admit, this was pretty groovy. They got a hood ornament on the top of the sandcrawler, which is obviously the Krayt Dragon skull.
That actually reminded me of the vintage toy, the Ewok battle wagon. That was the big battle wagon that had the huge skull on top as well. I don't know if that's a nod to that. How did the Jawas get it up there?
Oh, well, they're pretty resourceful. What can I say? And I like this from Dale. Is Din is good. So they're exactly right. But it does look groovy, though, doesn't it? Hey? I mean, imagine they turn up to the Jawa swap meet with that thing on the roof. They're going to go, mate, that is awesome. And you're right, amongst all the intiggies. And it's like, how the hell did you get that up there? So
about five Rontos had it on their head. Or
yeah, exactly right. Now I love this, right? So we're back on Tatooine. We're back to the core story. Right, even though we've left Boba Fett, Din's buggered off to meet Cobb Vanth, and then one of the first things that they talk about is Grogu. Where's the little guy? I get rid of him.
Yeah, it is one of those things where I guess, look, there were 3 episodes of Mandalorian where they were working towards Boba Fett, and I guess maybe they're doing 3 episodes of Boba Fett with them reminding everyone of the Mandalorian, but I don't think it was really needed.
Yeah, exactly right. Rod said, Fennec, every episode, you want me to kill him for you? A woman after a man. Exactly right. She doesn't, she always shoots from the hip. What can I say? So absolutely love it. All right. So there we go. The desert, stranger comes from the desert. And we finally get to see who that is. And of course, this is harking back to the old Lawrence of Arabia sort of imagery. Because if you remember, when Din parks the ship, the deputy comes out and says, you've got to park that in the flats, right? And Din just ignores him because like Cobb Vanth says, no, it's all good. So clearly, this dude, who we're going to reveal in a sec, got the message. You've got to park out in the flats. It's like 100 miles away, and he's got to walk into town. What do you reckon of that?
Yeah, I did think that, and I thought, well, he's obeying the rules because he's obviously a by the book gunslinger. I did think it would have been funny if you see it off in the distance, and when it got a bit closer, it turned out that he didn't have any he didn't have any legs, and he was floating, and it was Watto with his hat coming into town. But of course, that was never going to happen. So this was a return character that I did not expect. Did you have any idea this was going to happen?
No, but I'm going to put this comment up. This is an absolute classic from Sarah. Mando, as in like Din, was outshone by Grogu. Boba is now being outshone by Din, Circle of Life. Now Din has been outshone by Cad Bane. And I thought this was a really, really good intro. So for those who don't know, and I think most people do, Cad Bane was originated in the Clone Wars animated series. He's worked his way, I think, in Rebels and bloody Bad Batch and here, there, and everywhere. One of the coolest bounty hunters on the entire planet, and now he's in live action. And even I didn't see this coming, but I got to say, it worked an absolute treat. And I don't think anybody could complain about that.
Well, the interesting thing about this, firstly, for aliens in the I guess Disney Plus TV series, this goes to one of the best looking so far, I think. He has just the right resemblance to his version in the CG cartoons, and he is obviously a total badass from what they've done with him. But it is interesting, a fistful of spice. It is interesting that when I interact with customers in the shop, it runs the gambit from, oh my goodness, one of my favorite characters is in, I can't wait to get the hot toy of it, down to, I never watched any of those cartoons. I have no idea who this character is.
And as we've discussed before, there's an ongoing thing with the live action series, both Mandalorian and Boba Fett, where they're bringing in all these characters that originated in animated shows. Ahsoka's being a perfect example, Bo-Katan, now we've got Cad Bane. There's just a whole long line of them. And you're right, there would be a lot of people say, oh, this dude's cool. Who is he? So does that mean you're less of a fan if you don't know that he's from all these animated shows? I don't think so. But it's interesting because now that he's popped up, you're thinking, oh, okay, so how does he now fit in the scheme of things? Is he just going to just disappear in the desert again? He comes along, does his thing, and then buggers off. So you would like to think he's going to return at some point. But yes, that is the downside of reintroducing characters from an animated series that people may not have seen before. So There's a classic line here. Deb has said, I'd like to have seen his ship. It's weird he walked in and out of town. As we've said, it's a common Star Wars trope that people park a million miles away and then hoof it into wherever it is they've got to go to. They don't park at the front door. At least Din parked out the front door. Whereas, as I said as a joke, he's been told to park out the flats, and that's where he's decided to park his car, and away he goes. So it's highly logical, but it's a very, very common thing. And if you go through all the Star Wars things, like even Rogue One and all these other series, they do it on a regular basis. So, yeah.
And it is a very
every which way but Bane. Love it.
It is a cool way to introduce a character for them to walk out of the heat haze of the desert.
Yeah, totally agree. And you are right, Daniel. It was voiced by the original actor, which is particularly groovy. So, yeah, I think a lot of people go, oh, my God, it's Cad Bane. How groovy is this? So, and for those who were wondering, yes, he did not kill Cobb Vanth. He just wounded him. But as for the deputy, yeah, he kind of left a mark. What do you reckon?
It's one of those things where, you know, there's a character that's stupid, obviously, the deputy, and his boss is saying, do not draw, go back inside. Do not draw, go back inside. We all knew what was going to happen to the deputy as soon as he didn't do that, you know.
Rod has mentioned, and I have heard this too, a lot of people complaining that Cad doesn't exactly look the way he does in the animated series. I think people are just like, mate, just settle down, kids. That's nitpicking for the sake of nitpicking. And Cad Bane looked great in live action. That's enough said. Okay, anybody who's complaining about it has got problems. Now, we were talking about poor Boba Fett earlier, right? Now, Boba Fett appears in this episode, doesn't say a word, looks like he's like a stunned mullet. And I thought, how ironic is this? The Weequay guy had more screen time, more dialogue, and had more to do than the lead of the series. And I thought, what does that tell you in this episode?
It tells you anyone who had a Weequay focus right back from Return of the Jedi, it finally paid off where they've taken center screen over Boba Fett, but I'm not sure how many people that covers, really.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, Michael said, yeah, it's the third deputy this month. And to be frankly honest, that deputy was a dipshit, so it was good to see him cop it. So there you go. Absolutely. He's a red shirt deputy. That's the Star Trek reference. All right, Sanctuary Cantina. Everything is buzzing, right? The Pike dudes turn up, right? And we go, okay, all that was missing, because it was clearly the old, the Western trope, when the bad dudes turn up, everybody stops talking, the piano player stops playing. And as it turned out, the piano player wasn't there. So Max Rebo chucked a sickie on this one day where shit's going to go down. How lucky is that? Did you notice that at all?
Yeah. He's the elephant not in the room.
Because poor Max, he'd be thinking, every time I go to work, freaking things are blowing up. But I thought it was kind of funny that everybody else is present, and I think I've got a picture coming up that it's all everybody, all the regulars are back, but poor Max is he's out the back like smoking a ciggy or something.
Yeah. Oh well, it's the luckiest break that he's ever had again.
Yeah, exactly right. I reckon that was intentional that they didn't put him in, and of course, even the Pikes. So this proved that the Pikes can't be bought. So the old shining helmet scenario, that wasn't going to work for him. Yep. And you could sort of see what was going to happen. And of course, the old ice cream maker makes a reappearance. And we thought they just made ice cream, but they kind of don't. What do you reckon, dude?
Now here is my question. Okay, it's the Pikes exerting their power. What exactly did Gaza Fripp do to deserve that? Surely they go to a meeting with Boba Fett and try and say, look, we're going to have some talks, and they leave the ice cream container there.
That is a good question. The answer is there's no answer, because it's the only area that we were aware of in the series that we've seen, right? The Sanctuary Cantina. Yep. Now, there's maybe Gaza had some. Actually, no, it wasn't really made clear as to whether she had strong links to the mayor. But the mayor's working with. She was basically
paying everyone off, as what I could say. She was paying everyone off to stay safe. Even when Fett went in the first time, they filled his helmet, and they were going to fill the Pike's helmet. So I presume that she was doing that for safety and protection. So what did actually go down that crossed the line for her?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you'll find from a narrative perspective, there's no answer. They've just done it because it was the one place everybody was aware of. It was the go-to joint. That's probably a weak deficiency in the storyline.
What they needed to do was have one scene where she says, no spice in this establishment, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that would have
or when they walk in we don't serve your kind here. Your pikes, I'll have to wait outside. I love this one from Rod. Where is Max Rebo from Vader? Is he safe? Is he all right? I love it. As he said, Max was bought off. It's certainly possible. Who knows? Maybe if he ends up in Mos Eisley talking with the Pike guys, playing his piano in the background there, you'd be thinking, Max, you shifty blue bugger. What can I say though? Is she dead though? You would have to assume that it is the case now, because you see everybody just as the bomb goes off. And I think if anybody survived that, they'd be doing damn well. But I've got to say, now's a good time to open up a rival cantina because the current one's shut down.
Always a businessman.
Yes. So it's the common thing where you introduce a character, these background characters, the scene, the cantina. It's great. It's wonderful. And then you blow the shit out of it because it's like you don't expect it. And that's the key thing. And like the Pike guys walk in, drop the Tono off and then bugger off. And it's just something left field. And you think, okay, we're going to count for every single person except for Max Rebo for whatever reason. I think the producers just said we don't want to kill him off again. And they just blow the place up. And I thought, well, yeah, even if it makes no sense whatsoever, it worked well for the story. So
it was a major dramatic beat. I just feel like a lot of the characters in this series that they were underused, where there was so much potential, and every time you see them, they're great and intriguing to see how they fit into everything, and then they're gone.
Yeah, and that's the reason why you saw everybody. They made a point of showing, Muftak and the other guy and the droid there and the two dudes with the helmet shining and Gaza and all the rest. They made a point of showing everybody, right? They didn't have to do that. And clearly they meant to say, okay, everybody's here, and these are the ones who are going to die. And I think that worked out quite well. So that's our end of the sequence on Tatooine. We're back off with Fluky, Luke, and Grogu. And, of course, the key sequence of the entire series. Right, now, first things first, we discover that the galaxy far, far away is going back to the Middle Ages because they're making friggin' chainmail. What's the deal with that?
It looks like Frodo's mithril shirt from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit to me. I think a lot of people have mentioned that, though.
I mean, if you know anything about the history of the Middle Ages and chainmail, it's meant to stop like edge weapons like knives and swords and shit like that. And it doesn't. The laser blast is sure it's made out of Beskar and all the rest of it, but it is kind of funny that he's he's not exactly a shield from Dune or anything like that, is it? It's actually old school chainmail. It's like far out.
Yeah. If you're shot in the face, it doesn't really do much.
Yeah, exactly right. So and wouldn't it be funny? How would he slip it over his head? Because he's got these freaking big ass ears. Imagine. Let's not worry about those details, shall we? So there you go. And you are right, Gavin. You can't kill off a character the kids want to cuddle, and there's certainly a lot of cuddling going on here. So the other thing that comes up is Fluky Luke got Yoda's lightsaber, and of course the question is, where did he get it from? Because the last time we saw that, it was stuck on Coruscant after his battle with Darth Sidious, and Yoda went into exile almost straight away. It's not like he can say, "Oh, I need my saber back," or is it a brand new one? So that's one for the. It's like maybe he found it next to Luke's hand on Cloud.
I think the canon answer to that is a couple of Jawas turned up and Luke goes, I need you to find Yoda's lightsaber, and 20 minutes later they come back and they've got it. That's just how things work. Yeah,
exactly right, which is unbelievably funny. So thanks, Gladriel, but I think I'll take the lasers, Daddy. Oh dear. And Chrissy said, the chainmail's adorable, but expensive, but adorable, and very, very out of place for the galaxy far, far away thing. I mean, with all the armor and stuff that's going on, you would have thought, get like Din's armor and shrink it right down to Grogu's size.
Yeah.
Even with the little helmet with ears sticking out the side, would have been a little bit more cooler than chainmail, but anyway, whatever. So, and you're right. It was a spare, and Luke probably stole it on Dagobah. Yeah, that's what I thought too. When Yoda died, if Yoda had built another lightsaber, which is highly possible, that would make sense. But depending on which one it was the original one from Coruscant that he lost in Revenge of the Sith, or another one that Yoda had. But either way, Luke ended up with it. So there you go. Maybe it was the old case on Dagobah after Yoda died. It's like, oh, Yoda wanted me to have this when I was old enough, but he wouldn't.
I'm sure Luke ransacked Yoda's hovel and took everything that was relevant.
Yeah, exactly right. And as you said, he rummaged through Yoda's place after he died. Yeah, that's what you do when you got a dead dude, your dead master. You go through and steal his stuff. He's like, oh, he's got ultra rare collectibles, mint and pack box. I've got to take those. Yoda landed on Dagobah with an escape pod. He may have had a few ones from parts, may have had kept extra kyber crystals. Well, exactly right. He just reconstructed another saber. I mean, a Jedi without his saber is just no go. All right, so this brought us to the crux of the whole episode, right? It was the key thing, the money or the box, all right? Now, I'll get to you in a second. My perspective is clearly Grogu can't pick the saber because Luke says, if you take the saber, you'll become a great Jedi. And of course, we don't see Grogu ever again, right? In the sequel trilogy and Rise of Skywalker, when Luke is around as an old dude on Arc 2, clearly Grogu can't take the saber because otherwise he would have come in and saved the day, save Rey, save Finn, Starkiller Base, all that. He would have ended up in the movies somewhere, and he didn't. Not zero, not even referenced. So clearly he can't take the saber. He's got to take the chainmail, and that'll get him into season 3 of The Mandalorian and more money for Disney. All right, what do you reckon?
Well, I took a more metaphorical look at it, and I'll keep it quick. But I think the choice is obviously the chainmail, because if he chooses the saber, it's a choice that goes backwards away from Disney to Luke and the original trilogy and to the Jedi and everything like that. But Disney want people moving forwards to the Mandalorian and to Grogu, and that is taking the chainmail and embracing the future. And I think it's kind of the choice that we as fans have as well. Do we just like love what we have and stick with that, or do we go for the new series and embrace that as well? Now, I'm happy to go for the new series. I really love it, but I do know people who can't get their head around the changes and will say, I'm happy with the original movies and I'm gonna live there.
Deborah said, did he follow Yoda's lead and go into exile? There was no need for him to go into exile. The galaxy's at peace. The world, the New Republic's in command now. And the only reason why Luke went into exile, because he eventually, after he lost his Jedi Academy and he went cracked the shits because Kylo Ren destroyed the place, was out. He went hiding in Arc 2. Prior to that, though, he was out and about doing his thing, right? So there's no reason for Grogu to go into exile because, well, there's no reason. The world is one big happy place now. So, and the Jedi are returning. And you've got the Church of the Force as well, who would welcome the Jedi back. So, yeah, that's, if you're looking at it from a narrative point of view, it doesn't make sense that Grogu, especially like, you got to remember, The Force Awakens is like 25 years after this series. That makes him 100 years old. So he's a bit of a happening dude at this point, good old Grogu. So if he was around and he said, yep, I'm powerful with the Force, you think he'd come out of somewhere to help the good guys. And of course, he doesn't do that at all. And that's obviously the way they produced the movie. So, yeah, from that perspective. Exile from the First Order, but the First Order doesn't exist yet. So they won't appear for another 25 years. So even though it's mentioned in, I think, in the Aftermath books, it's not until about 20 years afterwards that the First Order start to make their presence felt. And only Leia is the one who picks up on their existence. And of course, the New Republic just ignores them. So until the First Order appears in the flesh, effectively in the Force Awakens, first time we've actually really seen them. Prior to that, no one gives a shit about him. So there's no reason for him to be hiding from them. So I hear where you're coming from, but now from a narrative point of view, it doesn't make any sense. So, yes. Here's a good question. Is Grogu going to wield the Darksaber? Well, you never know. Certainly possible. So we'll cross those bridges when Indeed. Peace from a certain point of view. It is peaceful. The New Republic's in command now. They set up their thing on Hosnian Prime. They go to Chandrila first, then go to Hosnian Prime. The world's at peace. It's only until the First Order launch their attack from Starkiller Base that the universe first learns about who they are. So, and that's actually referenced.
The world's at peace, but that means there is the room for crime bosses and stuff like that. When you see, I think it's the first episode of Mandalorian season 1, they look at the destruction of the Death Star and they go, they lived in peace for about 10 minutes. And then the gangs came into town and started to change the dynamics of the power balance. So
yeah, that's certainly possible. And I like this one from Greg. They'll add Grogu into the special edition release of the last movie. That's exactly right. So, and that's the downside of when you produce a series that comes out after the series that just happened, but it's set in the past, if that makes sense, or the future. Now, Deborah said, unless he goes with Luke but doesn't survive the massacre. We've said that before. We actually discussed this on another episode of this show, where if Luke's academy gets destroyed, does Grogu die? Now, of course, the cash cow can't die. It's as simple as that. And the fact that he's now got the chainmail means he's not meant to die. But what happens to him afterwards? So it's a real question of, unless he says, as in Grogu says, well, I want to learn more about the origins of the Force. I'm going to get in a ship and just like one-way ticket out of the galaxy. That's the only way you can explain what happens. So, or as we said, he doesn't do that, grabs his chainmail, hangs out with Din for the rest of his days, and that's it. He's his puppy dog for the rest of the show, the rest of the series. So there you go. Yeah, I like this one from Rico. If Disney can ignore 20 years of expanded universe, I'm sure they can ignore their own 3 movies if they want to. Yeah, well, that's exactly right. So anyway, it's actually brought us. Oh, geez, we've just rabbited on, haven't we? Brought us to the end of the episode. Now we're going to do the competition winner in a moment, but Christy, who's still watching, You've actually got to now give us your rating in Christie's Crimson Yawns. Bearing in mind, the more yawns she puts in, the worse the episode was. So if it's actually got less yawns, then she really loved it. So I thought it works backwards for those who didn't pick up on it from last week. So, which is actually particularly groovy. Now, is there anything you want to say before we get onto the competition side?
Not really. Predictions for next week, or are we just going to go to the competition and wind it up?
We'll do the competition. We're going to do the Crimson Yours. And if people are willing to hang around and discuss what's happening in 2 days, that'd be great. Yep. I like this one. Maybe he goes wherever Thrawn and Ezra are. Well, that's a good point. Yeah, it's the world between worlds. Wouldn't that be the funniest thing? I mean, there's got to have an out clause for him no matter what. So, because he would be, Grogu as an adult would be unbelievably powerful. But we don't see what happens to him. So, yes, Darth Grogu. Wouldn't that be the funniest thing in the universe? Give him a red lightsaber and away we go. All right, so we did a competition last week about who was going to return in the series this time around. And as an example, if you're going to take guesses, clearly like Luke and Cad Bane and on the Weequay would have fit. But you've got the answers to who won the competition. So I'm going to pass it over to you.
The closest one was actually Moneybags. So he predicted...
Oh, really? Mr. Moneybags Sullivan Daniel? Yes. Oh, my goodness.
So we've got the prize here. And the next time he's around in the shop, he can come in and pick it up. So I don't know
if he's still, go. Well done.
Still watching this on YouTube, but if not, we'll get that to you somehow, mate.
Lovely. Well done, Mr. Daniel. Good work to you. Yoda Lorian, I love that. And Christy. So Christy's got to rate the episode, and she's come up with 8 yawns. And she said, I love the Luke Grogu feel, but it went too long and would have been better in the Mandalorian series. So there you go. So in the end, Christy wasn't the happiest camper in the world with his episode. So there you go. And Daniel's a happy camper. Yeah, baby. So well done. So there you go. Prediction for next week. Somehow Palpatine returns. Oh, my goodness gracious me. So there you go. Well done. 8 yawns. Now, how did you rate the episode, dude?
Again, I've got to give it 2 ratings. As a piece of television, I probably thought it was about a 8.5 out of 10. As a Boba Fett show, again, probably about a 3 because he just wasn't in it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the stuff with the Sanctuary Cantina and the blowing up of that. I thought that worked out quite well. The whole Luke Grogu thing, it was designed to bring in fans who are thinking the rest of the series isn't working for them. It's intentional as putting Grogu, put all these cute scenes in there, is deliberately done. Not to further the story of the Book of Boba Fett, but to bring in people who may have been dropping off because the rest of the series hasn't been much chop. So as a book, I mean, I'm still standing on my argument here, even though it should be love Star Wars as a whole. I agree with you. I think as a Book of Boba Fett episode, it was very disappointing. As an episode of The Mandalorian, it was fantastic. Yeah. It's got all this fantastic fan service. But yes, it was a bit of a letdown in that regard. So yes, it didn't work for me at all. But yes, there you go. I like this. Gavin said, how about Snoke? Good old Snoke, who's a strand cast of Palpatine, as we discovered later. Yes, there you go. Did you want to ask or discuss or bring up what you think is going to happen in the next couple of nights with the in the next?
Last episode? People are happy to speculate. I actually don't know. This episode threw me because I did think we would get more of an idea of what was going on in the Boba Fett storyline. I still think there is the possibility that Boba Fett will die saving the Mandalorian. I don't know if they haven't really used him as much as I thought they would. So that's my, out there theory that maybe that happens.
Yeah, that would be a nice clean-cut way of getting rid of a character that they clearly want to move away from and then making the replacement character the main dude. And, of course, Grogu will go back to the Mandalorian. That's a no-brainer. Okay, so it's kind of funny because Din has said, well, I pissed him off to his own people and now he's come back again. So if he ever goes back to the armorer, and the armorer said, why'd you keep bringing him back for? It's like, you're supposed to be getting rid of the guy. Don't bloody keep him with you. It's like, but it's the way it's got to be. This is the way. Exactly right. I like this one there. The show needs more random shots of the head. Exactly right. Boba's primary appeal has always been his mystique, but there is no mystique anymore. That's the problem. It's all out in the open. His helmet's off all the time. There's no mystique. We know everything you need to know about Boba Fett. So that's all lost. And the fact that that's the case in this series is very disappointing. All the mystique is now with Din. And there you go. Good stuff. All right. So anyway, the last episode's in 2 days' time. Hopefully they do wrap it up nice and cleanly. They've obviously got our group of baddies. The town, Freetown, which used to be Mos Pelgo, they'll all join in. right? So the Weequay guy, he's going to crack the shits over the fact that poor old Cobb Vanth got shot by Cad Bane, so he'll get the troops together, and they'll come in. And then as to what happens then is anybody's guess. As to whether it's a long-term thing, I mean, they kick the Pikes off Tatooine, as we've seen with the train sequence earlier on in the series. The Pikes will just come back with a bigger force, right? I mean, they're a crime gang that exists throughout the galaxy, right? They're not to be trifled with. They're right just below Crimson Dawn in terms of their authority and their power. Even the Hutts pissed off out of Tatooine because they're afraid of them. So it just makes logical sense that whatever's done to the Pikes in this episode or the next episode, if they do win, it'll only be a short-term victory because the Pikes, they will be back. So, yes, very good. Yes, thank you. You're right, Mr. Gavin. Another show done and dusted. So, yes. There's no way they could have thrown 2 Luke eps because it just wasn't going so well. Yeah, we've got all of our theories as to why Luke was brought into this. Maybe because they had the technology to do it. And they said, mate, we've got to have an episode of Luke because he looks grouse now. He looks good. He sounds good. Chucking Grogu. Suddenly the fans are interested. And, of course, the fans are going, oh, my God, it's the greatest thing ever, even if poor old Boba Fett's been left out in the open. So, very good. And you are right. Yes, having him on the show was always a risk, and we've discussed that in previous episodes as well. Oh, here we go. I wonder if we'll ever meet Shizor, Black Sun. Well, Black Sun is canon, but Shizor currently is not. So, yes, it's just to be another crime syndicate to add to the mix. But we've said that we think the Crimson Dawn will make an appearance. That could be the power behind the throne, but at the moment, it doesn't look that way. So that could be one thing we got wrong. So there you go. Actually, even Deb said she'd like to see Black Sun be involved. Shadows of the Empire tie-in. Yeah, exactly right. So, yeah, we saw them in the Clone Wars. I don't think we've seen them since. So, yes, very, very good. What do you recommend, Mr. Aaron?
Well, I do think one last thing to end on. The whole Disney universe has seeded stuff over the last couple of years, which has then come to pass. So last series, the Gideon talked about how Mandalore was bombed to glass, and then we've seen it. And the one thing that they've mentioned twice this series that I don't think is going to be resolved in the series, but may come to pass down the track, is that Tatooine used to be a water planet, and it's a very interesting story as to what happened. And I'm going for what would destroy a water planet and turn it to desert? Maybe a Sith Lord creating life from nothing there, draining all the planet's energy and life force. So that's my long-term call down the track of what happened on Tatooine.
Are you saying that Darth Plagueis lives? Are you putting it out there like you heard it here first? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying he lives, but I'm saying that might be what in the past caused a nexus in the Force or whatever, or a vergence in the Force. That the whole balance of Tatooine, the life of Tatooine, was destroyed to create Anakin, and that might be where they go with that. But that's just a crazy theory. But you heard it here first.
Well, because I'd said Plagueis was responsible for the creation of Anakin with Shmi. I had a whole episode I discussed about this ages back. But anyway, even Daniel said about Kira coming back, pulling the strings. We've said that about Crimson Dawn. Yes, Crimson Dawn returns, then clearly she would be back. And it would be awesome if Amelia Clark was in it. But we'll cross those bridges. We could keep on yapping on till the cows come home. We were here to review an episode of all things. And it's time for us to Mickey whoop and get prepared for the final episode of the series. How good is this? Any final words before we buzz off, Mr. Aaron?
Just really looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone, for joining in the discussion tonight. Probably next week it might be a longer one just because it's a series wrap-up as well.
Yeah, exactly right. And there's a lot of philosophical discussions we could have, but we will save those for another day, maybe even another series. So there you go. All right, we're going to party hard, rock on. We will see you all next Monday to discuss the final episode of the Book of Boba Fett. Until then, oh my God, stay nerdy. Okay, catch you guys.
Good night, guys. See you.